Now, programming from the Illinois Channel, an independent, nonpartisan corporation formed to provide nonpartisan coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. For more information on the Illinois Channel, please visit our website at www.illinoischannel.org.
Just ahead, Governor Rauner holds a press conference in celebration of National Apprenticeship Week and discusses his agenda to make Illinois more job-friendly. Later, he addresses questions on when the state will pass a budget. Then in about 20 minutes from now, in our series Across the Aisle, Republican State Senator Pam Althoff and Democrat State Senator Toy Hutchinson discuss the struggles so far in reaching agreement over a state budget and what the legislature can do to improve bipartisanship, as well as increase government transparency and how tax dollars are allocated. Following that, in about 1 hour from now, we talk to Phil Gannett, president of the Illinois Coal Association, about how the election of Donald Trump will affect America's as well as Illinois' coal industry. And finally, in about 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, Hardik Bhatt, the Chief Information Officer for the state, gives a presentation on how improving information technology can increase government efficiency. That's all just ahead, after a brief word from one of our Advisory Council members.
Hi, I'm Dan Montgomery, President of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. More than 100,000 IFT members work each day in schools, universities, colleges, and state agencies across Illinois. They're professionals who teach our students, keep our public buildings safe and clean, and provide critical state services, and much more. As an advocate for our members, their professions, and those we serve, the IFT works in Springfield to support legislative policies that promote high-quality schools and public services. We also fight to protect collective bargaining rights for all our members and all working men and women. We do this through an organized program of advocacy and year-round monitoring of public policy proposals. And that's why the IFT is proud to support the work of the Illinois Channel, whose coverage connects us to legislative debates and committee hearings, as well as interviews with leaders on key issues like the state budget, tax policy, public pensions, and education funding. Funding education is one of the primary responsibilities of Illinois state government. So we should all pay attention to the policies being proposed and how they may help or harm our children's futures. You know, what's happening in the State House today directly impacts what happens in classrooms tomorrow. And what happens in classrooms impacts the future of our state and our nation for decades to come. I'm Dan Montgomery, President of the Illinois Federation of Teachers, and I'm proud to serve on the Illinois Channel's Education Advisory Board. The Illinois Channel, it keeps us all connected.
Next, from Springfield, Governor Rauner holds a press conference in celebration of National Apprenticeship Week and discusses his agenda to make Illinois more job-friendly. Later, he addresses questions on when the state will pass a budget. This runs about 20 minutes.
We're here to celebrate National Apprenticeship Week. This small business is the backbone of Illinois' economy. Small businesses just like this one, their success is key to Illinois' success. They have a good apprenticeship program here. We have a couple young people who are part of the apprenticeship program here. I'm here to say thank you and congratulations to them, especially to one who's a veteran, and I said God bless him for that. We need to do two essential things to get a better quality of life for the people of Illinois, higher standard of living, higher incomes for the people of Illinois, strong, booming economy, creating a lot of good jobs, and an outstanding education and training system in Illinois, so our people are given the skills to maximize their income, maximize their productivity, and be all they can, maximize their potential through their careers of work. This is what we're striving for. Apprenticeship programs are part of that training that we need in Illinois to have the best workforce, the highest paid people in America. Apprenticeships are key to that. Our governor's Cabinet on Children and Youth has made expanding apprenticeships around the state a core part of the agenda we're going to be trying to accomplish in the future. We're here to say thank you for those who have great apprentice programs and look forward to expanding them. And we look forward to making the regulatory changes, workers' comp is especially one, to make sure the system is designed to do what it was originally intended to do. Workers' comp was never designed to treat health issues outside of work. In Illinois, we've tried to force those in or let them come in. It's driven up our costs. It's increased fraud and abuse. And it's pushed employers out of the state. And we've lost good-paying jobs because our workers' comp system is not fair. It's not competitive. And even leading Democrat Attorney General Lisa Madigan has said we need causation in our workers' comp system in order to have it be fair and appropriate. We need to make this change. It's the #1 regulatory change we need to make to get this done. Now, I imagine many of you are here because to get my comments about the 4-leader meeting. I'll make a quick comment now. Workers' comp was one of the issues that we talked about in the 4-leader meeting today. I would say there continues to be reluctance to want to embrace reforms. I would say that's true. Certainly was very evident yesterday, a little less evident today, which is good. It's just going to take persistence. It's going to take meeting very regularly. I believe we can get there. There were 5 topics. The request from yesterday's meeting for today was to let's go deeper on the reforms that we're recommending. So today we passed out an agenda. We had an attachment for that. But then we also gave very specific items. First, we gave our workers' comp bill that we introduced last year to the leaders. They acted as if they'd never seen them before, even though they had. But you know, that's part of the process. I encourage them to actually read the bills because it's very specific about what we recommend changing on workers' comp. Very clear. We also gave them the term limits bill that we've introduced. Very important, very clear. One of the ways to restore the confidence of job creators in Illinois is to change the culture in our government. We've got a reputation for bad government in Illinois. We need to change our reputation. And we all know that a lot of the tough votes in Illinois come in lame duck sessions, like we're hoping will come here in the next 60 days. Well, you know what? One of the good things term limits does, it makes everybody a lame duck on a rotating basis. That's a good thing. And people can't be there to have a business career in their office. They're there to be a public servant for 8 or 10 years and leave. That changes the culture. We really need this change. It'll help grow jobs. It'll help bring down our taxes. It'll restore good government, and it'll restore the confidence of job creators. So we had a good conversation about these issues. And we discussed the 5 key types of reforms we think we should have as part of our budget discussion. Property tax relief. We have the highest property taxes in America. It's crushing our job creators, our small businesses, and it's crushing our working families with the cost of living. In that regard, unfunded mandate relief and government consolidation is a key part of it, along with a property tax freeze. And we gave, again, to the leaders, these specific recommendations that our task force made, bipartisan. We had Democratic legislators and Republican legislators on it. Evelyn Sanguinetti led that task force. They issued a report summarizing the changes on unfunded mandates and government consolidation they recommend. We gave the report again to the leaders across the aisle. They acted surprised, like they'd never heard of it and hadn't seen it. But they said they would read it. I hope they will. And then we can use that as a basis for discussion. That can help bring down our property taxes. Number 2, workers' comp. We gave them the bill again. They said they would study it, and we would talk about it again. They've had it for a year, but, you know, hopefully this time. Number 3, term limits. Got the bill. They're reviewing it. I think it's critical. #1 way we can change the culture of government in Illinois. Number 4, education funding reform and more school choice. Critical. We need the best schools in America. And what I promised to do for the legislators is give them we're going to try to meet with them every few days. We haven't scheduled the next one because we got Thanksgiving coming up, and a lot of us are going to Rome for the Vatican visit, so it's a little harder to schedule the day, but we're going to try to meet again very soon. I promised that every time we meet, I'm going to give them an update on what the task force on the education funding reform is doing, because we have a bipartisan legislative group talking about education funding reform. And I believe we're going to get there. I do. From my reports I've received so far, they're making progress. So we're going to use that in our leader meetings to guide our negotiations around the budget and education funding, because we're going to need more K-12 funding in order to get the new funding formula to work. We're going to need more money for it to work. So this is a very direct impact on the budget. And then finally, pension reform. Certain folks don't want to talk about that, but we have to. Now that certain state pension funds have changed their investment assumptions and lowered their return assumptions, which they've done in their board meetings in the last couple months, that's going to require the state government to put $1 billion more into the pensions next year. Okay, this money doesn't grow on trees. This is coming out of the hardworking people of Illinois. We need pension reform. The pensions are unaffordable. They're crushing us. We've got to get pension reform. And I'd like to do a bigger reform than most, but I said in the spirit of bipartisan compromise, I'll do what President Cullerton has recommended. Let's do the consideration model. He's laid it out. And let's do it for all the pensions, state and local pensions. Our calculation is that could save Illinois taxpayers over $2 billion per year if we do that. Big deal. And I was able to, the president agreed that he would take the first stab at drafting a bill to do that. And that ball is his court. I hope he'll give us an update when we meet again in the coming days with the group. So progress is slow, but we're going to stay persistent. I've told him I'll meet anytime. I'm a workaholic. I'll meet 24/7. I'll meet in Chicago. I'll meet here. I'll go to wherever they want. Let's meet regularly, because we have less than 60 days. This lame duck session, this is the time when tough votes can get taken, because they're going to require some tough votes. They are. None of these votes are going to be easy. There's certain special interest groups that won't like what we got to do. That's just true. I mean, we got to acknowledge that. And so we got to get it done. And if we lose a week or we lose period, we can't let it go. That's the reason I was so persistent. Let's meet. There was resistance to meet. Time is clicking. We should be meeting all the time. And I'll meet every day. I will literally meet every day. Let's see what we can do. We'll get it done. It's an exciting time. It's an important time. We need big change for improve the future for Illinois, and I think we can get it done.
Another year or two if the Democrats still hold out, because if there were social service agencies here, they'd say, we're closing now. We need a budget now.
Many of those social service agencies are ones that I personally donate millions of dollars to. I care deeply about our social services. It is horrible that they've been impacted by this budget stalemate. I want this done now. We should have done this a year ago. Everything that we're advocating has bipartisan support. For all 80-some% of the people of Illinois support term limits, let's do it. It's not politically hard. Just do it. Everybody wants property tax relief. Everybody in Illinois wants property tax relief. Let's do it. Even the Attorney General says we need causation in workers' comp. She is not a Republican. Let's do it.
So you're still saying no new revenue without these reforms, right?
It would devastate the state. We will never, let me be clear, we will not have long-term balanced budgets if we only raise taxes. It won't happen.
Do you have to get everything on this
No,
list?
no, no. I've been clear. Not everything.
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 Is there a minimum amount? I mean, you've made workers'
No,
comp
I'm trying to be flexible. I'm trying to be flexible. Now, I laid out a 44-point turnaround plan. I've done a lot of turnarounds in my life. I know how to turn around an organization. We're doing it thank you to the leaders here for acknowledging we've changed state government well, but we need the legislature to help change things that has to be done through the legislature. And I've laid out 44 points, and I've thrown a lot of those out. Just say, okay, we can't do everything in the first year. Now we're in the second year. Soon we'll be in the third year, which is ridiculous. But I've got it down to basically 5 things now from 44. And we can throw out 1 or 2. It has to be significant. It has to send a message to job creators. It's a new day in Illinois. Come to Illinois. We have to get job creators coming to Illinois, or we'll never solve any other problems.
Can you talk about the impasse ruling?
I'll come back to you.
Term limit. Let's go to vocational education for a moment.
Uh-huh.
The pipe fitters run a great school up north.
Yeah.
They pay their students $20,000 to learn.
Uh-huh.
this could be expanded. Would you be looking to put any state money directly to maybe working with the unions?
Sure.
In their training programs as compared to just the higher education?
Absolutely. We should work together cooperatively. All the entities that care about education and training should be coordinating their efforts, and the state government should play a role in that. I would be excited to do that. And I've talked to some of the trade unions about their apprenticeship programs, and I'd love to help them expand.
Yeah,
Yes.
you've been pretty adamant that you've gone from 44 to 5 key issues. I mean, would you be cool with getting one this year and then one next year, just to at least appease the speaker and his group?
Well, so here's what the comeback used to be back 2 years ago was, well, Governor, just do a big tax hike, and we'll talk about that stuff later. Does anybody think that they'll talk about it later? No. Those in power have been in power. Those in power have created the problem. And when it just frosts me, you know, I'm an emotional guy. It frosts me when they say, oh, we got to balance a budget. We got to do a balanced budget. They've never had one. And they're saying somehow it's my fault. I mean, come on. Can we please grow up? We're not 6-year-olds. Let's deal with reality. Let's get good long-term decisions made to help the people of Illinois.
Is it realistic to expect 60 days is enough time to get anything done?
Yes, it really.
2 years more. What's your contingency plan?
We do have a contingency plan. I'm not going to talk about that.
You say that the leaders today have seen everything that you presented already. What leads you to believe that in the next 2 months they're going to budge on something they've had 2 years to think about?
It's a great question, and it's because every month that's gone by, I've personally seen and heard Democratic rank-and-file legislators say, you know what, this is baloney. We need to, and some have gotten brave enough to say it publicly. I think it was Elaine Necritz, but others they're saying privately, we need a balanced budget with reforms. And I think there's a growing sense within the rank-and-file, not with the leaders yet, the rank-and-file, time up. Let's do this.
Last question. Last question. Tax increase that was discussed today in the leaders meeting. What a tax increase was discussed this morning? The Democratic leaders mentioned that. Just wondering.
Yeah, well, the speaker was pretty clear. You know, when was it? A year ago, December. He said, you know, let's get the income tax back up to 5% and go from there. I said I'm open to considering new revenues. I don't love that at all. I'm an anti-tax guy. But as part of reforms, I've said that let's put it on the table and talk about it. I've always said that.
Governor, how long? We had last question.
Okay, fine.
Last question.
All right. I'm sorry. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
But you also said I'd get another chance to ask about the impasse.
On the impasse.
Can you say anything about the impasse to your 38,000 employees who are affected by it?
You can say one thing on the
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, on the impasse. So I think it's very good for the people of Illinois. It's good for taxpayers. It's good for the state employees that we now have some resolution. The delays on this resolution have been costing Illinois taxpayers almost $2 million a day. Let's be clear. Delaying on these negotiations has been costing Illinois taxpayers almost $2 million per day. Now we got resolution. That's good. I think it's a resolution that's fair for taxpayers and it's fair for our wonderful state employees, and we have wonderful state employees. I'm an advocate for them. It's very much the same deal that we've already had with 18 other unions. This is not like, you know, some unusual deal. It's what we've done with everybody. It's got merit pay, which is great. Let's pay people more, but let's pay based on productivity and doing good work. It allows a 40-hour work week. What a shocking idea. Instead of a work week of 37.5 hours, let's do what everybody else, what every taxpayer has, is a 40-hour work week. How about that? Allows that. It allows, many people want to volunteer to help serve the people of Illinois. We weren't allowed to have volunteers work in the Department of Natural Resources or in our state parks or in some of our state facilities or our health facilities. Now we can have volunteers help. Common sense. It allows good common sense changes to the system. And in the long term, it'll save $3 billion over the next 4 years. That helps with our balanced budget, critically important. And it's fair on all levels. And I look forward. Some things I think we'll want to implement fairly quickly. Others I think we'll do phase in in partnership with AFSCME. I want to work very closely with AFSCME. Some things we need to phase in over time. We'll work that out. We want to have a good, positive working relationship with the leaders at AFSCME, and I think we will. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Governor.
Appreciate that extra.
Next, from Springfield, in our series Across the Aisle, Republican State Senator Pam Althoff and Democrat State Senator Toy Hutchinson discussed the struggles so far in reaching agreement over a state budget and what the legislature can do to improve bipartisanship, as well as increase government transparency and how tax dollars are allocated. This runs about 40 minutes.
Here we are, Toy Hutchinson, Pam Althoff.
We're back.
Often a partnership and collaboration that goes on here in the Senate. It is the first day of veto. We have not yet gavelled in, even though it's noon and we were supposed to gavel in. And I think that the point of kind of talking is to rehash what we've done and where we are as we move forward. You and I were very much engaged and collaborated in the working groups that started. It's now 2 years, where we recognized even prior to election season that we had a crisis with regard to the amount of money that was available to use as revenues and expenditures, and the amount of bills that were piling up and programs that needed to be funded. So a collaborative group of women got together, both chambers, House and Senate, and started to sit down and talk about what were the potential solutions that we felt our individual caucuses could support as we moved forward. As I sit here, I take credit all the time with my constituents anyway, that those discussions were actually very much the framework of the stopgap budget that was ultimately passed, identifying those programs we thought that absolutely needed to be funded, trying to move forward with additional collaborations and conversations about now what do we do as all of that ends December 31st.
Yeah, and don't you think when we lay that out and we talk about what the purpose of those work groups were, I mean, I almost think that that's the thing that we really need to get out to people all across the state, that's really the democratic process, like the D with the small d, that it was rank and file members that came together and had to be in rooms with very, very significant disagreements and difficult conversations where we had to kind of give each other the space to say, this is what I think, this is what I believe, to move this ball forward some kind of way. And I'm at the point now with all the frustration we have about how long this has been and how long this has taken to get done, that it really will have to come from rank and file members.
Absolutely.
This is between the two chambers. I mean, it's obviously, the two chambers aren't the same. We don't operate the same. We don't, there's much less of us here in the Senate, or as fewer of us here in the Senate. And, I can't speak for my counterparts in the House. I just know how we operate over here, which is, in some ways, I think, unique.
It's extraordinarily unique. I'm going to jump in. In fact, I just came from an affordable housing supportive living conversation panel, and one of the comments I made is you can tell the cultural differences when President Cullerton votes for Christine Radonio, minority leader, when we elect the Senate president, and she in turn votes for him, which sets the stage that says we're going to work together, regardless of our differences. That too is part of the Democrat process. You were elected by your people to represent their needs, mine by my people, my constituents. But let's have those conversations. Let's sit down in a safe haven and have a conversation and try and come up with a compromise or a solution or something we can all support and move forward. And for a long time,
totally, and even trying to get people to see that. A lot of some of these differences, I mean, there are the big glaring partisan ones, but a lot of these differences aren't necessarily Democratic versus Republican. A lot of them are regional. So when you really understand what the shape of Illinois is, and 102 counties, and every single one of us come to this job having been sent in our districts with a certain constituency, every single one of us. And I always talk about how when you come on the floor, this is the one place where you would be around people that you wouldn't otherwise normally be around. You wouldn't have normal conversations with people who don't live anywhere near you and don't think about things like you do and see things from a totally different view. And I think one of the things we've lost, honestly, I think one of the things we've lost is the ability to talk to each other. We spend so much time screaming at each other that we're not talking to each other. And those work groups were, an opportunity for us to be in a room to do exactly what it is we're supposed to be doing, which is trying to figure out how to take people from all different walks of life, all over the place, all over the state, and govern. If we can get to the point now where we govern instead of politicking, this is... I think that's the only way we're going to see our way out of it.
Absolutely, and we agree on that.
Yeah.
But let's talk how difficult that is.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were working in that venue, in a quiet venue, not part of the governor's working group. We were our own group that started long before that, with a huge amount of respect, a huge amount of personal connection between ourselves. But we kept that relatively quiet, because once you allow the whole world to start to view what it is you're proposing or talking about, you get huge amounts of pressure from all stakeholders, from individual constituencies that see that they may be losing something or something may be shifting, changing that will affect them. And so, I think that we're at a point in time where the pressures are so great that we have to sit down and we have to come up with solutions, and people have to allow us the ability to have those candid conversations without going, oh my God, they're giving away this, or oh my goodness, they're not getting enough.
In an environment that is designed right now to divide, not bring people together. The whole process and the way we approach our politics today really is getting in the way of us being able to do exactly what it is we're trying to describe here. This is, I recognize, and here's where I talk about the delegitimization of the opposition. That if we're sitting here having a conversation, I have to understand that your views are as strongly held to you as mine are to me. And you can't, there's really no place to move forward if you can't at least accept that premise, that there are two people sitting here who believe what they believe. And so, irrespective of whether or not I agree with what it is you say, I have to hear what it is you say.
Exactly.
You have to hear what it is I say. Otherwise, never the twain shall meet. And when we're all on the floor, here we are, all in one place. And if we can't even acknowledge the fact that there are some people who feel very strongly a certain way and that there's going to be opposing views, how do you get to the point where we can find things out we do agree on?
Right, and I
like an antiquated tax code for 1969, not 2016,
where everything's changed.
Right.
But I do tell people, there is a difference, and I think we've lost that part too. There is a difference between campaigning and telling people who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in, as opposed to coming down then and governing with people who have, again, as you stated, 100% different opinion, perspective, but we still need to talk and try and do
nobody can do it alone.
Right.
No, there's nothing that can happen in this building, under this dome, alone. No one person can do anything alone.
Even though we go home and say that I was personally responsible for it.
Right, like I did that. Yeah. Like I passed that, I did that.
I changed education funding.
We all know when we're sitting on the floor, it's like it takes 30 in the Senate and 60 in the House. Any idea I have to convince at least 29 other people to agree. And those 29 other people in the Senate represent a piece, 215,000 people that they have to go home and answer to. None of us, the thing that is more glaring than anything else for me right now is that neither side is going to be able to solve this alone.
Absolutely.
Neither side.
And we're back to that wonderful word that you and I use all the time, trust.
Right.
I have to trust that you will work with me, that what you say is true, that you will trust me, that my opinion matters, and that the information I bring to you might be incorporated into an idea that you may have. But again, that goes back to developing relationships outside of under this dome, which we used to do very well. Go out and talk, and I'd find out how many children you had, or where you come from, or what your experience, where you went to school.
What your family looks like, it goes back to you can't stand up and call someone a liar and un-American if you know how long it takes them to get to Springfield, and if you know whose family member just got diagnosed with cancer, or you know how many children they have and how difficult it is to balance all this stuff. There's certain things about being here that only we know.
Correct.
And at that point, I think that's where I look at what they used to talk about in the ways of the Senate. You know, there's only 59 of us on that floor, that we're all elected senators on that floor. There's only 59 of us. And within all these other little groups, we have to find people who care enough about our institutions and about the solvency of the state on any of those big issues, that children in your district have to be my children too. Children in my district have to be your children too. These are the kids across the state of Illinois. And the magnitude is so big right now that we don't have time to be pulled aside by things that don't matter to the folks that are really hurting through all this right now. Like people who don't know what's coming next or when the other shoe is going to drop, or it's just
I would look
we don't
at
have
you
time.
and I would look at you and say that even recognizing that there is no time and this is crucial and this has to be fixed. December 31st is right around the corner.
Right.
I also would like people to quit doing these short-term, fix it up now, worry about the consequences tomorrow.
Later.
I am so tired of individual stakeholders, whether it's mental health, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's autism, name them all, of having to spend their precious time in coming down to Springfield every year to advocate and beg for money and beg for program sustainability. I mean, I just find that to be such a poor use of their time. And
when they're trying to actually deliver services.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so, you know,
Absolutely.
my ask would be too is that we don't just fix this for tomorrow. These are conversations where we have to find a long-term solution to give people some breathing room so that they're not back here again, oh my goodness, in March.
Right.
They need to be able to go home and put their programs back together.
Whether it's a business argument or a nonprofit, there's a business case to be made for predictability and stability. One of the best things we could possibly do for this state is stability.
Right.
And people understanding exactly where we are so that they can make plans themselves. That could be a kid that's deciding whether or not to stay in Illinois to go to college. That could be a small business that needs to know what the tax structure is going to look like so they can plan 5-10 years out. That could be, I mean, anywhere across the spectrum, predictability and stability is something that is wreaking havoc everywhere. And so my ask is that we stop talking about taxes in this silo, that as if we don't ever acknowledge what those taxes pay for. So it's on one side we have these conversations only about taxes and nobody wants to pay anymore and everybody gets that, I don't either. And then on the other side it's like, yes, but we have to pay for this and this. You want domestic violence shelters, we want veterans homes to be operational and to help with healing and care in their last days and last years. We want Meals on Wheels. We want people to know childcare. Right. We want people to know that when you are at your most vulnerable stage, that there is a safety net for people.
And I want to go beyond that. I also want people to know how much effort has gone into our budgeting for results and our GATA programs, which is, yes, nobody wants to pay more money, nobody wants to have to do that, but now we're actually developing, and it's 80% done, a program that will evaluate all of those programs. Are you using the money wisely?
Right.
And if you're not using the money wisely, why not? Do we need to help you? Do we need to modify, revise, or do we need to eliminate? But there will be a very transparent program which should give taxpayers more less anxiety about where their money,
what we're doing.
Exactly. Right. Where their money's going.
And that's what I mean about not talking about, or that's what I mean about talking about taxes without talking about what they pay for. Because I do think that, if we continue to have almost a consumer mentality as it relates to that, people need to have an expectation of a value for what they're getting. How is our educational system? How is our safety? What is the strength of our safety net? What are the core functions of government that we ought to be doing, and are we doing them well? You can have those. and a critique on that can exist in the same place with a critique on what and how much and when are the taxes that we should pay, and they can both be true at the same time.
Absolutely. And
I mean, they can both exist in a space where we can have more than one conversation at a time. We can be working on more than one thing at a time. Because right now, I feel like we're missing the forest for the trees.
I agree.
And it's every day that goes by is just heartbreaking.
And we also are doing, I think, a better job of telling people how what we're doing and what they're paying for affects them personally.
Right.
Whether it's direct access to those services or a better healthy community
Correct.
or whatever it is, I think we're doing a much better job saying that we're using your money wisely. And I'm not saying we did it well before. In
Right.
fact, I would tell you we probably
we
didn't. But
Didn't.
we certainly have shifted gears and we're walking down that path a lot better today. And I don't think people also recognize that even though we've made great strides, I believe, and we still need to do more, we have a host of new members.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if you look at what's happening,
Yeah.
even though we talk about term limits again, we have had a huge change. In fact, we were talking today that in the House Republican caucus, over 50% of them are either freshmen or sophomores.
Right. If
They're
you look
all
at the
new.
well, that's the argument I kept saying over and over again. It's like if you look at the chambers, they turn over.
Mm-hmm.
They turn over on average every about 10 years. When I look at the picture, like our big picture our panoramic picture that we take when we first come in, and I have 3 now. It's a totally different chamber than when I first walked in that door, and it's you want people to be able to understand, how things work, have some institutional knowledge, be able to, if you've seen things, over some years, there is value to, this is probably the only job where training, experience
Exactly.
is a liability.
Although it truly isn't, but everybody views it that way.
I don't quite
Exactly.
understand how training, experience, and education for this is a liability. I mean, if you're going to go have heart surgery, I kind of want the heart surgeon who's really good at this and has been doing it for a while.
And has seen the bad and has adopted the good. We
now
talk about
gone
this
are the
sometimes.
days I just cannot even imagine. Gone are the days I think where this is a place where you come and park for your whole. I think that's a societal shift. I mean, it's no different than the job prospects out in the community anyway. Most people change jobs every 5 to 7 years.
Right.
Every 5 to 7 years. That's what tends to happen. But we're in a really unique time, and I don't want to understate, because I feel it. I feel unsettled. I feel nervous. I feel worried. I feel anxious. I feel all of those things because, I'm raising children in this environment as well. I need this state to be the best it can be, not for just mine, but for all of our kids. And when I look at what's happening right now, I am more determined than ever to be a voice for what we can do better. Because we cannot. I mean, what's the definition of insanity?
Do the thing
You
over
keep
and
doing
over.
the same thing over and over and over again, expecting somehow something to be different. And this is this is the time where I think all of us will be tested and all of us will be challenged because, it's easy to be statesmanlike in good times.
Well,
it's much more difficult to be statesmanlike
in bad times.
In bad times and in times where the atmosphere is and can be as toxic as it is.
And the time of saying to people, we're working on it. We recognize that problem. We're working on it.
Right.
We've done that. We've done that for 2 years.
Right.
We're way beyond that. We now have to work on it and come up with a solution that we can pass that gives comfort and actual stability to individuals. And again, you're right, whether it's not-for-profit, whether it's business, whether it's our schools, we have to give some stability to the people that live and work in the state of Illinois. And that's what hopefully we'll be able to accomplish.
This is, if we can keep talking.
So, between you and I, what do you think about lame duck? You think that any of this is we're going to use this opportunity to actually sit down and try and craft something so we don't wait for new members and have 12, 13 days of absolutely no authority to spend any money whatsoever? Or do you think that there will be an effort? I'll start it and tell you, I think that there'll be a strong effort in the Senate. I do believe that President Cullerton came right out after the election and made a comment. Governor Rauner came in and concurred and responded to that. So I think that there'll be some effort here.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think shame on us if there isn't. I think we need to tamp down all of the hyperbole surrounding lame duck. When you are elected to serve in your office, you are elected to serve until the day you are no longer in that seat. And so I don't think anybody should abdicate their duties in a time period, whether they're staying or whether they're leaving. We are, especially in a situation like this, where every week we go by, we're raising the debt. We are causing further damage, and we are digging a deeper hole. There is a price to inaction. There's a cost to inaction, and inaction is action. Right. So at this point, I am prayerful that there's going to be a big push. For that time period, because I'm prayerful there's going to be a big push in veto session. Like maybe we could work on things other than overriding stuff. Let's things that we can actually get done as a General Assembly together.
And I think there are. I'll look at you and go back to my comment that I'm pushing all the time is procurement. Look at how hard we worked on a bill that actually reforms procurement, that makes it more efficient, that allows people to respond more rapidly, that puts people to work quicker. 80% of that bill is done and agreed to by all four caucuses. Mm-hmm. There are possibilities there that we should move forward and have some successes so that we can build on that as we deal with things that are a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging.
Well, it's definitely true that at some point we need some wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
We definitely need some wins. And when I say we need some wins, I mean we, the people of the state of Illinois, need some wins. We need some movement. And, there were a lot of really good pieces of legislation that happened over the last over this last cycle. Some really good ones.
You were working?
We were working. We were working. Hours and hours of those work groups on top of also other pieces of legislation we were working. But certain things that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the campus sexual assault bill. I'm proud of the fact that we all came together in that bill, and that was another piece of unanimous action for all of our schools here. I'm proud that there were a number of pieces of legislation that we passed that when you look at the roll call, it belies what you see over the general airwaves, that we never talk and we never work together and we never agree, because the big marquee disagreements are the ones that get all the ink. But there have been some really outstanding pieces of legislation that were then signed by the governor over this last cycle. Our criminal justice reform.
That was an excellent piece of legislation.
And it was an example, again, and people come to it for different reasons. And I'm okay with people coming to that for different reasons, as long as we get that yes up on the board.
Well, and as long as we have a piece of legislation that tries to address as many of those concerns as is possible, without undermining.
We really are in a moment in time, and I think one of the things that'll be significant is we'll start to see voices raised, and I'm excited to see, a level of, I don't know another word for it besides statesmanship.
But
I think it
is statesmanship.
we need it. I think we need people to step up and speak up and do it in a way that allows folks to hear.
Absolutely.
Which is different. That's different than
talking at me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's different. And in a legislative process, it's so critical. It is so critical, because if I shut you down before we even get a chance to, so I was in a classroom with a bunch 7th and 8th graders, and it was so much fun. They had just started studying their Constitution. And so we separated them into two even groups. So we had little state reps, and we had little state senators, I said, you guys have to elect someone in your chamber to speak for the group. So we had a Senate president, we had a
minority,
and we had a Speaker of the House, and like in both chambers. And so we kind of like, yeah, they each chose little girls, and those girls whipped those chambers into I'm telling you, it was watching them do it and watching them take multiple votes. And then I peeked over the crowd and I said, okay, now I need you to get your yeses to talk to your noes, and you have to get your noes to talk to your yeses, because in a democracy, majority rules. So whatever the majority of you all say is going to be what the vote is over here. And I did it in the same in the other chamber. And they debated, and it was about whether or not the state of Illinois should create a bill that keeps anybody under 13 off social media. So it was something they were interested in. They all had social media. They all had social media accounts. They were engaged. They were debating. They all came up with things that one kid said we should call T-Mobile and Verizon and Sprint and tell them that they should come up with an app that that captures age and sends an automatic email to parents to let them know that a minor is trying to get a social media account. And I said,
we shouldn't laugh because that'll happen.
I know.
That'll happen.
Because, and then the conversation in there was that our laws have not kept up with our technology. So when you guys think about this, don't think about this in terms of your social media account. I want you to think about your little brother or sister. Yeah. Think about people who live on your block. Or think about if anybody you know has ever been bullied. It has to be bigger than you. And so the bill failed in both chambers. Clearly, they were like, no, we're not kicking ourselves off social media.
Yeah, right.
But in the conversation afterwards, I remember asking our Senate president, and she was just as cute as she could be. I said, what do you do next? The bill failed in both chambers. What do you do next? And she thought for a second, and you could just see when she clicked, she said, you redraft. I said, right, why do you redraft? She said, because if you take what some of the people who said no to first, and you incorporate, she didn't use the word incorporate, she said if you add in what some of the people who said no wanted in the thing, then maybe you'll get them to say yes the second time. And I said, right, and what does that do? And again, she said, you make it better. Yeah. And in that conversation, it was the way this works, the way our system is designed, the way our democracy is designed, is that you have to take into consideration the opposition. And when you take into consideration the opposition, things change and you make it better. It's the only way you can move forward. Those kids, I'm telling you, with all the stuff that's going on around the world right now, they refueled me. I mean, I cannot tell you, watching this, because at the end I got to say, there is honor in this. There is honor in public service. There is honor in caring about things bigger than you. There's honor in this. And you guys can't vote, but this all belongs to you. It was so wonderful, so much fun. And in an hour, they got public speaking, they got negotiation skills, they got a little civics lesson. It was so moving to me to watch these kids debate. And then I said, what was one thing
civilly as well?
Civilly,
okay,
right.
That's it. Okay,
and so this one kid cracked me up because I said, what surprised you about this whole thing? He goes, I didn't think there was going to be this much opposition, especially since you got a social media account. I mean, his point was, you have one. Why would you vote against that? And even that piece of it was right. Like even if you think this makes all the sense in the world, and this is the way I view this, there's going to be somebody who doesn't.
But
there's going to be somebody who doesn't.
Let's go back to the circle again, the conversation we had from the beginning. You have to be open enough to hear that conversation and take it in. Otherwise, you never have that understanding.
No, and you never get to it. You never find the sweet spot. Yeah. You never find the sweet spot. And, we're not all going to get everything we want, but the game is to move this ball forward. And I just wanted them to go home, and see something different than what they're hearing. That, when you have a whole lot of people in one place, this is the way we govern ourselves. This is unique to this country. This is the way we govern ourselves. And it is hard, it's messy, it doesn't come in a nice, neat little bow, and it's not designed to.
Well, we represent diverse people. This is a big, huge, diverse, dynamic country.
102
And we just saw that with our federal election, but bringing it back to state, 102 counties with different challenges depending upon where they're located geographically, depending upon how large their population is, what they have in the way of economic development around them. We all come from different perspectives, and we need to share, otherwise we don't learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And at some point we got to get that, there's a greater Chicago metropolitan area, and then there's 93, 94 other counties that look more like each other than they do that.
We
and if you don't know that, if you've never seen it, you never traveled, you never left your district, you never. And I think almost one of the things we might need to start talking about is inviting other members into our districts and doing conversations like that, because people need to at least see why this is important to me.
Do you remember when the Farm Bureau did that?
Right.
The Farm Bureau partnered the people from Chicago and some of the right, and you got to go down and you got to see the members need to do it. Yeah, no, I agree. And there's a template though.
If you live way up north, go visit somebody way down south. This is. You live in the western part of the state, you'll see what it's like on the eastern part of the state. Some of the border issues, whether you border Indiana or whether you border Wisconsin, whether you border whatever state you border, some of those issues are the same. But then some of them, depending on the local economy around that area, are very, very different. Very, very different. And so there has to be some way for us to put these pieces together again so that we can recognize that, yes, we advocate for our own districts, but we're all here on behalf of the state.
It goes back to the same thing. You have to create an environment of trust and collaboration so that you can move that forward and have those conversations and not feel that because you have a different opinion, it's somehow going to be criticized before you have an opportunity to express it.
I know, like when we said, how am I supposed to negotiate with someone I'm supposed to kill?
Exactly.
You just
can't do that.
Can't do that. There is no negotiation that happens in an environment like that.
And we talk a lot about property taxes up by where we are and how high they are and what a problem is.
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't talk about property taxes.
But that is very unique to the Collier County area. Mm-hmm. If you go down to Peoria, if you go down to Bloomington, you don't have any of those similar issues. So again, when people get frustrated, that's because it is unique to a very specific geographical area and isn't shared necessarily with the rest of the state.
Right.
We have to educate.
And school systems.
And school systems,
yes. All across the state, the primary funding for that is property taxes. So, I have conversations all the time, like, what would your property taxes be if we could take the majority of the burden off the local tax system? That was, it results in wildly disparate funding levels for, various places all across the state. And until we're talking about all of these kids, like they're all our kids.
Right.
If a kid can't read in Peoria, I should be worried about it in Olympia Fields. I should know if there's somebody who, is losing their home because it's moving too fast because they just cannot keep up with all this in McHenry. We should care about it in Kankakee because it's the variations of these things are happening all over the place. If we can, and I think now more than ever, start to look at this as a state.
As a whole.
That this is a state. This is our state. This is our state. This is our home. It's just as much my home as it is yours.
We can be much more successful if we work together and we have building blocks that we put up together than ripping each other apart and saying, I'm not going to work with you and I'm never going to listen.
And I know this sounds incredibly Pollyanna-ish. For people to listen, no, I just mean, we all exist in the partisan world that got us here. And that compromising is selling out. And I think there are some principled things where, we're just on opposite sides of those things. And we can't not acknowledge that. We can't, I see the world differently. I see the impacts differently. And I deal with those impacts differently. Everybody has their truth.
Absolutely.
So,
and I have to respect that as you have to respect mine.
Right.
And that doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't make me a bad. It just means that on this issue,
we may not. Right. And that's okay.
It is. It's okay.
That is okay. And this is what I mean by everybody knows where we are right now. That this has been absolutely horrendous. Everybody knows where we are right now. And we know that there are people who can, the people who were in the work groups were, working really hard at trying to lift us out of this. And I know that there are, people who are looking at this like, That's all fine and dandy. Like, you two get along, that's great. But dude, what about the chambers? What about the leaders? What about the governor? What about, all those things? And I think that's the piece that is really, really difficult to talk about, because part of it's a combination of, there is the external political environment. We just came through a very, very long, divisive, contentious election in this country. And so we can't understate the need enough about how we're, if we keep on this path, really horrible things can happen.
So, all right, I'm going to ask you, and we just had this conversation, a little bit hard for some people to come back into the chamber and say, oh, yay, I'm going to work for you because we're going to be friends now.
After millions of dollars saying I'm crooked.
Right.
And we all said it. You're crooked, you're crooked, you're crooked, you're crooked.
Oh, yeah.
So as far as anybody's listening to us, we're all crooked. Who the hell do you believe?
Right. Well, that goes back to the trust factor.
Right.
That's why there is no trust from the constituency back to the elected official, then to the body of governing. So where do you think we're going to go? What's the solution? What can we do to actually present a solution and then get buy-in from all of our colleagues?
Well, the one thing, I think whenever there's an issue that impacts almost every district, like take what's happening with mass transit right now.
Yeah.
Every single mass transit system is in danger of collapse. Every single one, the whole downstate transit system. Anything south I-80, anything that's not in the RTA region. And that affects almost everybody. Almost everybody. I mean, that's one of those, it's almost like the higher education system moved towards, a negotiated thing. The childcare crisis was something that,
everybody could understand.
Everybody could understand, and it impacted a whole lot of different people. What I am hopeful for, but want to warn against, is that we don't need any more Band-Aids. We don't need any more we don't need any more half solution. We don't need any more, you get this, we're gonna do this piece like this, but we can't talk about these other things. I mean, we need
That's not stability.
A budget. We need a budget. We cannot operate without a budget. We've always said we need a budget.
And I think we need and I think that if we can do it, we need to have a 2-year budget. We need to finish this, and we need to work on a budget that already can be put into place, and we're not playing with that for the next of the 2017 year. Mm-hmm. We really need to get something put together to create the stability so that we can work on a long-term solution, and we don't have to keep doing the Band-Aids, ripping it off and saying today, you're impacted.
Right. So it's going to require. I mean, it really is going to require. This is. If it were easy, it would have already been done. I mean, it absolutely would have already been done. We're at a stage right now, it's like we all have to, it's like you can stay true to your principles and stay true to your core and stay true to your constituencies while you are working to govern. And that's going to be a test. That's going to be a huge test in these next 2 years. That's going to be a huge test. And I'm hopeful that nobody wants to repeat, what we just did. I'm hopeful that people are loud enough in their districts to tell us that this is what we're not going to accept anymore. But I do think that in some of this, I mean, we're going to have to make decisions that aren't about the next election. They can't be about the next election.
And we also can't leave this necessarily in the hands of just the leaders.
Right.
I think the General Assembly members are going to have to start to stir up and get together and really create some movement and not wait for leadership to decide what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
No, we have to.
Yeah, it has to be a under the dome grassroots effort from all of the members, both Republicans and Democrats, House members, Senate members, that look and push back at our leaders and say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And if you don't take action, then we're going to have to be forced to.
My district, and that's where you can make your district argument. My district just cannot withstand this anymore. I'm looking at, when I meet a woman who gets on a bus to get to a train, to get on another bus, to go to school all day, and then do it all over again, come back. The next day is like rinse and repeat, And that, she has a car that doesn't make it where she needs to go. So the bus is really the only way she can continue doing this. There's so many stories like that, whether it's getting to medical appointments, doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, whatever it is you need. It's like you can't, that system collapse, which is imminent, is indicative about so many other things. It's like you can't say, I really care about education and then lose the transportation system. Or I really care about childcare and then lose the transportation system. Or
How about developmental disabilities? And that's the only way for those individuals to have a better quality. Right.
To get there. Right. So at this point, it's like, hopefully these are the kinds of things that push action in a way where, the election is over now. It's over. And so we'll have to wait and see whether or not it's the next election starting today or if it's the time to start governing today.
And I don't think that enough can be said at this particular opportunity to our constituents who need to remain engaged. The election may be over, the voting process may be over, but now more than ever, they need to make sure that their voices are heard and to hold us accountable and make sure that we're doing everything that we promised to do and not just working at it.
Right. And again, it's, when you go back to your district, we recognize if I could solve this by myself, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
And I can't solve this by myself. That's not how it works. So making sure that we're communicative and that we're transparent and that we're showing what it is we're trying to do, then at least then people can say, well, there are some people that are working, and we can't ever stop working at this. This is probably, I've heard people say, it's like they don't do anything. It's probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, but it's also the most meaningful job I've ever had, and I think our state is worth fighting for.
I do too, and it's the people of the state that are worth fighting for. And again, I look at all of that and say, don't give up. Make sure your voices are heard. Governing is a participatory sport. It's not just the legislators. Right. It's also the people who demand and hold us accountable, and that's extraordinarily important, particularly now when we're all frustrated, depressed, angry. You pick the adjective or adverb.
Yeah,
but
citizenship requires action.
Yep, and now we need to work even more closely together. So I am certain that some of the working groups will be reconvening and working. So even though it's the holiday season, we will be spending a huge amount of time together again, coming up and crafting a solution and trying to ensure that people are taken care of. But one of my issues, and I'm going to leave with you, is we also need to ensure that there is some type of a sustainable revenue stream for all of our human services instead of just dealing with that as crumbs, so that they have some stability, just as we do with education, just as we do with our business structure, tax code, all of those things. They need to be part of that now too.
Well, they absolutely. And again, I don't know how anybody makes the argument that revenue is not a part of it.
Of course it is.
It has to be.
And by the way, tell me now, as we're concluding, who is the chairperson of the Senate Revenue Committee?
That would be me. Who is the Republican spokesperson for the Senate Revenue Committee?
That would be me.
So
there we are.
Let's do this.
Let's go.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Next, from Springfield, we talked to Phil Gannett, president of the Illinois Coal Association, about how the election of Donald Trump will affect America's as well as Illinois' coal industry. This runs about 20 minutes.
Phil Gannett, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And this is the first time we've had a chance to talk to you following the election of Donald Trump. What does his election portend for the Coal Association of the United States, let's say, or the coal industry, I should say, of the United States, and for Illinois coal miners and businesses?
Yeah, it means a lot. It changes everything. It's a total game changer. Hillary Clinton would have continued the policies of the Obama administration, which we called the war on coal. We expect President Trump will withdraw those rules, the executive orders, and that's the interesting thing. For 8 years, we complained that the president was going around Congress and enacting laws through executive orders and rulemakings Well, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And so those rulemakings are easy to withdraw. So we expect the Clean Power Plan to be gone, Stream Protection Rule, Paris Climate Treaty, everything's gone.
And what impact, for people who don't know, they hear about regulations, it's rather obscure, I think, to a lot of people to really understand how that impacts the guy who's running a coal business or the guy who's a coal miner. What are some of the, you just mentioned them, but specifically what were they doing that were having such a negative impact on the ability to mine and sell coal?
Yeah, it was a two-pronged approach. One was to make it more difficult for coal-burning power plants to continue to operate. So it made it harder. You had less of a market in the United States to sell coal. Then the Stream Protection Rule is a total rewrite, and that's flown completely under the radar because it doesn't get the attention that the Clean Power Plan does. But the Stream Protection Rule is a total rewrite of the federal mining regulations that the Office of Surface Mining, that's in charge of this, took 6 years in secret to develop. They issued the rule, proposed rule last July 2015, gave us 60 days to examine 6,000 pieces of paper and exhibits, and they wanted to rush this thing through. Furthermore, they didn't consult with the states. In Illinois, every coal mining state, except Tennessee, has an agency that is delegated the responsibility to administer the Federal Act. And the federal law requires the Office of Surface Mining, OSM, to consult with those states. They failed to do that. So we've been trying to hold that rule up for as long as we could. It was sent to the Office of Management and Budget, Office of the President, in May for a final review. Generally, those reviews are 30 to 45 days. The coal industry has sought meetings with OMB to show where the weaknesses, either procedurally or technically, that were in this rule to slow it down, and the rule still hasn't been issued. We expected them to issue it the end of September. Now, even if they do issue it, we don't care because we think President Trump will withdraw the rule. So that would have made it harder for us to get a coal permit. So it was a two-pronged approach. The one rule that has already gone into effect and then was later invalidated by the Supreme Court was the Mercury and Air Toxic Substance Act, MATS. MATS is the acronym. We've lost in this country 100,000 megawatts of base load coal-fired generation because those power plants could not or were not willing to make the financial investment to meet the stricter air quality standards. Now remember, the United States, even before the MATS rule, again it's a rule, had the most strict emissions regulations of any country in the world. In fact, one of the statistics I like to use is in the last 40 years, the electricity generated from coal has doubled, and the air emissions have been reduced by 80%. And so what the government was getting at was marginally, more strict standards, but it really didn't have that much of an impact on the emissions because we're already very low.
When you say the amount of electricity produced by coal doubled in the United States?
Right, from 1970 to probably 2015, 2014.
Now it's a surprising number because people would have thought the opposite, that the use of coal would have been declining over the years to produce electricity.
Right, and it has. Since 2008, I think that was the last time coal was more than 50% of the energy source for this country. And we've declined pretty steadily since 2008. Some of it's been because of these policies by the Obama administration, and some of them, quite frankly, have been caused by the fracking, producing more natural gas, and the low price of natural gas. So those are the two factors that have impacted the coal business. One we can fix a little bit, but natural gas is still going to be out there as a competitor, and so that's going to be a concern.
I can imagine a lot of people who are concerned about the environment or would label themselves as environmentalists would be saying, oh my gosh, here we go, we're going to be rolling the clock back, we're going to be making the air dirtier, increasing the number of asthma cases around the country. What do you say to those people who have those concerns?
We have the most strict air emissions laws in the world right now in the United States. The incremental gain by fewer emissions, we believe is not worth the cost of doing that. And so, frankly, it's investing too much to get too little. And then when you look at the Clean Power Plan, what everyone seems to forget is carbon dioxide is not a harmful gas like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury, and those three we're already controlling for that. If you have to operate in the United States a power plant, coal-burning power plant right now, your emissions of those three gases are controlled at up to 98% of that gas is taken out of the stream of gases that come out for the stack. So we're already controlling for that now. This whole notion that carbon dioxide is a harmful gas is crazy. You know, in 6th grade biology, I learned photosynthesis. You know, plants are good because they inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen so we can live. And this whole notion of global warming, climate change is now taken on as a health issue, and I think people are, I think, wrongly too concerned about the impacts of that. And I'm frankly kind of tired of every unusual weather event right now is blamed on global warming. And the Earth has been here hundreds of millions of years, and you can't take an isolated event and blame it on global warming. And there's a lot of evidence out there, and I know we don't want to go down this path that we're going on, so I'll end it there. But
let me jump in and say, if the President Trump were to eliminate these executive orders that the Obama administration had put into effect that had such a negative impact on the coal industry, what economic impact might that have on the miners that you represent, on the industry that you represent, and conceivably of perhaps employment in Illinois?
It stops the bleeding, frankly. And like I mentioned, we're not going to get back to the 1 billion tons of coal a year that was produced in this country as recently as 4 years ago. This year,
that's a national figure.
National figure, right? And this year will probably be around 700 million tons of coal. So that's been a decline of 30% that's pretty much occurred in the last 4 or 5 years.
When we lost that coal as an energy source, what replaced it?
Natural gas. And actually, the energy efficiency programs that are in place in a lot of states, including Illinois, have frankly worked. Our demand for energy in Illinois has declined about 4% in the last couple of years. So for years and years, we saw the growth in energy needs, go up and up and up, and that's leveled off and in fact going down. So that's, that's impacted it. And there's been a growth in renewables, and frankly, we're all in favor of an all of the above strategy for producing power in this country, but you've got to realize that you need baseload power. And we've talked about that.
Remind us again what baseload means.
Yeah, baseload is a source that can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and up to 365 days a year. And windmills don't produce power when the wind's not blowing, and solar panels don't make energy when the sun's not shining. And so they are not baseload power units. They're good for peaking. They're good for when they're running, but they can't bring the reliability to the grid that people in the United States have come to need.
So maybe technological breakthroughs might come down the road that they could be producing baseload power. Right now, they can't, those alternative energies. The other factor we often don't discuss with these wind and solar, when people are pushing those as a energy source, is the cost differential between electricity produced by wind and solar versus coal. As I understand it, what is coal, about 4 cents per kilowatt hour?
4 cents.
And what is the comparative cost?
Wind is about 20 to 22 cents per megawatt per kilowatt hour. So the only way that wind can compete in the marketplace right now is because of subsidies that they get from the federal government.
Is similar with solar
yes.
being that high?
Yeah, all the renewables, in order for them to be competitive as an energy source, they receive tax credits or tax breaks or subsidized in some way. I just saw an article, Lakeland Junior College is taking apart their two windmills because it's going to cost $150,000 for them to repair, and they don't have the money to do that. And in the article, it said that in order to install them, it was free because they got federal government funding. Well, that's not free. that came from your tax money and my tax money, but that's the notion out there, is that, oh yeah, I can put up a windmill and the government's going to pay me to install it, and then they're going to give me a subsidy, and then they're going to require people to buy it when it's available. Well, that's a pretty good deal if you can get it, and that's what the renewable energy folks have these days, and maybe some of that's going to change too. We're not saying do away with renewable energy. We're for all energy sources, and I think there's going to be a day, and it's not going to be next year, but we're going to be able to make base load power, something different, not nuclear, not natural, and not using fossil fuels. So look at the technological advances that have been made during our lifetime. We're going to be able to make electricity by something else, maybe 50 years from now. We won't use coal, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, right. And so what you're saying is while we have those other alternative technologies being developed, and you have to do something before you can improve it, as I often point out to people. So that may, as you say, come. Right now, of the electricity produced in the United States, or if you want to address Illinois, how much of it is that, we take it for granted because we've, in our lifetime, always had electricity be abundant and affordable. How much of that electricity that's generated comes from coal?
In the United States right now, it's about 30%. It varies because and it's been trading places with natural gas, so they're pretty much neck and neck at around 30%. And each month, there'll be slight changes.
So 60% roughly from fossil fuels.
From fossil fuels. Nuclear is running about 18 to 20%. So the remainder is renewables. So that
some is hydro.
Yeah, and that's a renewable energy source too. About, I think, 5 or 6% is hydro. But I think all renewables across the country are probably running about 8%, so I didn't keep a running tab in my head here, but that might be close to 100%.
And what is the cost differential between natural gas and coal? Are they comparable? We didn't mention or are we having a danger of having electricity spike as we move from coal to natural gas?
Yeah. As long as there's fracking, I think natural gas prices will be low. Again, it's a function of the supply and also the need for that. I might as well get to stop this right. You can edit this. So it's according to what the supply is out there. If fracking is banned in certain states and they can't access that natural gas, that may have an impact. We look at the cost on the cents per million BTU. That's usually how we term this. Coal can compete at about $3.50 to $4 per million BTU. Natural gas prices today are about $2.80, so it's a little bit below coal. And I think going for the future, if I own a power plant company and I want to continue to use fossil fuels, I'd likely go to natural gas because unless something happens to the fracking industry, I think natural gas prices are going to be about where the coal is, and you don't know where federal policy is going to be. Maybe Trump's only in for 4 years. We get someone else come in and they're going to restore what Obama did. But I would make the bet on natural gas. Now, my members don't want to hear that because we think we can compete. But and there's other issues with natural gas as well. Pipelines. I mean, you have to have a pipeline to get from the main trunk to your unit. And if you have to go through someone's property, there's issues of getting, siting that pipeline. Look at all of the, turmoil we have in this country on oil and gas pipelines right now. So that's the challenge that natural gas has, and that's what I think will keep coal in the mix because of the challenges that they have. But the prices are pretty close.
And not to go too long, let me just we'll wrap it up a couple. As far as then, would we say, as far as jobs and the industry of your members, the Illinois Coal Association, it's not to say that getting rid of these Obama restrictions is going to increase necessarily employment or the mining of coal, but at least it'll allow those businesses that are operating to continue to operate, to afford to operate.
Right.
Those plants that are burning coal to continue to burn coal instead of shutting those down. How much of the coal that's mined in Illinois, and people I think don't understand how much coal we have in Illinois. We have a massive amount, right? It's something like the Saudi Arabia of coal.
And Kuwait combined.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How much of what we mine is for domestic use, whether domestic in Illinois or the United States, versus how much do we export, send down the Mississippi River to the Port of New Orleans and export to the world?
Right. Because our coal is high in sulfur, power plants need to have pollution control equipment. That's called a scrubber. In the United States, a lot of plants did not immediately put on scrubbers in 1990 when they had to control for sulfur dioxide emissions. So our industry suffered some losses because of that. We went from 62 million tons produced in 1990, and I use that as the benchmark.
Is that 62 in Illinois?
In Illinois, 62 million in Illinois, with 10,000 workers. We declined steadily to 2003. And in 2003, we did 31 million tons. So our production got cut in half. Worse, the workforce went from 10,000 to 3,500. We lost 2/3 of the jobs. We stayed in the low 30 million tons a year until about 2011, and then it started to spike up because the demand started to increase. Power plants out east started to put on scrubbers, and so for a long time, beginning in 2003, about 85% of our coal that we produced went out of state. So we have a way to get it out. Our coal fields are close to the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, so we can go anywhere in the world. In 2013, of the amount of coal we produced that year, which is about 52 million tons, 12 million of that went to foreign countries, mostly to Europe. That market has dried up. Again, it's supply and demand. It's a marketplace. As the dollar grew stronger in value, it hurts exports. And so the coal that we were sending to England has been replaced by coal from Russia. And so we peaked again at 58 million tons in 2014. But our workforce was only 4,500. And that's because the productivity gains in the equipment were so great that we could mine almost as much as what we mined in 1990 with half the workforce. Since January 1, 2015, we've lost about 1,600 jobs. And that was because of the downturn. You know, the export market, the foreign market has dried up. Power plants closed. And so that caused a little constriction in our market. And this year, we're about 25% down from last year. I project that we're going to do about 42 million tons this year. Last year, we did 56 million tons. I think we have a chance to grow because the two advantages we have in Illinois are our coal is easy to extract. We have huge seams, 6 or 7 feet, easy to get the coal out. And we have 4 longwall mines that are the most productive. They just cut, a path of coal. The surface will subside, but that's accommodated for in the permit. So we have the most productive coal mines in the country, and we have a way to get it to the market. And we know that way because we've been using it for a long time. And I think in a shrinking market, the low-cost producer is going to prevail, and that's what we have here in Illinois. So even if we shrink even a little more, as long as we can compete and get our product to the end users, which we can, I think we're going to be fine, or at least stabilize. We're not going to go back to 10,000 jobs. In fact, as of the end of September, we had 3,200. We dipped below 3,000 in June 30th, but we gained a couple hundred jobs since then.
And then lastly, we have some of your members, like Peabody Coal, I suspect as a member, had to declare bankruptcy recently. Is this going to have any impact? Is the Trump presidency going to have any impact on someone like them and their ability to maintain operations?
Well, I think just the elimination of the Obama policies are going to help Peabody. They're going to help every coal company. I don't think the bankruptcy courts function on their own. They're not going to be impacted on who's president. Arch also filed for bankruptcy, and they've emerged. They've reorganized, and they're out of bankruptcy now. And I think the same is going to be for Peabody pretty soon. They incurred some debt when they probably shouldn't, and they kind of guessed wrong in the market. And when they made the decisions, they seemed good, and then the market turned. And I think both of them are going to emerge from that as strong, viable companies.
All right. Well, Phil Gannett, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
You're welcome.
Next, from Chicago, Govt, the Chief Information Officer for the state, gives a presentation on how improving information technology can increase government efficiency. This runs about 35 minutes.
Thank you very much, Jay and Ed. It's always been a pleasure to come to the City Club, although it is my first time I've spoken. This is my 5th time speaking at the City Club. First time without having Paul Green at the head table and speaking that, so our thoughts go for Paul and his family. It was always a great, big deal to have Paul being here. If I'm in 18 months, 19 months in the job, and I still feel like every day I wake up, it's my first day in the job, that kind of excitement. Every day when I go home, I feel like I've climbed Mount Everest, and I feel that satisfaction. I'm extremely happy that with the achievement that we could do at the end of that day, and at the end of the month, end of the year, end of 19 months. And that could not really have been possible without having someone like Bruce Rauner heading the state as the governor, understanding the value and power of technology, and bringing people from outside to start changing the culture, changing how technology gets done at the state. It's really a great privilege to provide technology that improves customer service and improves government efficiency for 13 million Illinoisans. I mean, when I step back and think about what we can do or what we do and what we can accomplish for the 13 million people, it's really humbling to really think not many people get this kind of an opportunity. I mean, if you think about that. So really, it's an honor and privilege to be in this position. I take every day not granted. It's really an honor to be there. So what I wanted to do today was, I know I've come here last year and I told you the horror stories of how technology was getting done at the state, and I gave you a plan that this is how we are going to do what we were planning to do. And I wanted to give you an update of what we have done in the last 18 months, or last I spoke here, September, so 14 months. But also, we've been able to extract some lessons learned that could be applied to any digital transformation of any organization at the scale that the state of Illinois is. So it is something that I wanted to make sure that it is time well spent for you if you think it is, and you can take it back to other customers of yours or organizations that you are leading digital transformation for. So just to reset where we were when we started last year, state of Illinois was in the bottom 4th of the 50 states. We had C+ ranking given by the Digital Government, Digital States Survey. We were the 3rd highest spender in the 50 states, so tremendous disparity between how the dollar gets spent and what the outcome do we get out of that. We had thousands of applications, thousands of systems, multiple silos. We had cybersecurity worries that were not allowing me to sleep at night. And all of those things we started, and then from there, we started our movement. As I told you also last time, our oldest system dated back to 1974. So we had, and then the first term of the administration, the first term of this administration ends in 2019. So we had a huge gap to cover, 45 years of gap to cover, and we had to cover that literally in 4 years because, again, technology was moving extremely fast, and if we take 45 years to cover 45 years, there's no point in doing that. So literally it meant you want to travel 450 miles in 4 hours. How fast do you have to go? Math? About 110 miles, 111, 112 miles an hour you have to go in order to cover 450 miles. If you have to stop for gas, if you have to stop for food, if you have to stop for anything, crying baby in the back seat, you have to add those times because, you know, state of Illinois, crying babies. We have to add those. I'm talking about the bottlenecks that we have. So we have to add that time to that. So we have to literally travel at a pace that not just the state of Illinois, not a government, but in general, a private sector organization of this scale has not seen before. So what we braced ourselves for is something like this, which was whitewater rafting all the way, no smooth sailing. Starting day 1 to end of year 4, whitewater rafting for everyone in the technology team, everyone working with us, everyone in the vendor community. We were not going to stop to breathe. We were going to only make sure that we make necessary stops for filling our tanks and again, starting again. So it has been for the last 19 months, and you ask my team who's here, they know it's whitewater rafting for the last 19 months, and it's not going to stop. We're going to continue at that pace. I closed my presentation at the City Club last year on this Steve Jobs statement because we truly believe in this, that we are here to make a dent. Otherwise, why would we be even here? We believe in this statement. My team believes in this statement. And I want to report a progress. I want to start this presentation on an extremely positive note. In the last 18 months, we have been able to make a big dent in the status quo in technology at the state, and that also has been validated externally. Remember I told you we were bottom 4th in 50 states as it came to technology outcomes. The latest survey came out in September 2016, and state of Illinois now is top 3rd of the 50 states. We have moved, thank you. We have moved from bottom 4th to top 3rd, but we still have a long way to go. But we have lots of things, especially in the last 19, 20 months since we started this journey, we have added leaders one after the other. We have extracted leaders from the existing organizations across the state of Illinois, and it is that team that has come together to make this journey from bottom 4th to top 3rd in the last 18 months. So at this point of time, I'd like to request the Do It team to stand up and be acknowledged. Thank you. Thank you. And I also want to make sure that, I've been putting so many hours in the last 18 months, even after I left my nice job at Cisco and coming back at home and trying to come home every night. But someone who lets me do that, put more hours and spend more time at work and be passionate about what I'm doing, my wife Jagruti, thank you very much for making that happen. And obviously my parents and their blessing, my aunt's here too, so thank you very much for your continued blessings. So as I said, what I wanted to share with you today was 6 key lessons or steps that, in our opinion, we've been able to extract in the last 18 months that we think that this is how we did this journey in the last 18 months. As I walk you through these 6 steps, I'll also tell you some of the key action steps that we take, some of the key projects, accomplishments that we had, some of the key challenges we faced. And then I'll also talk about some of the leadership characteristics that we could derive from this leadership team that we have assembled and from the governor and governor's office leadership, as well as the agency leaders like Chris Meister sitting here that have kind of supported us, helped us, and then give you a key takeaway from there. So the first one is, and by the way, I did not build this presentation in November with that last picture. I built it in August. That's how faithful I was. That this is the year. I should have done it in April, yes. Actually, I could have done this in last October because the signs were there. Anyhow, so the first one is, as we think about 21st century digital transformation for any organization of this scale, you have to, first of all, have a clear focus on transformation. So as the governor came into our first CIO council meeting, his clear marching orders were, I want to give a 21st century enterprise to the citizens, to the taxpayers of Illinois, and they have been deserving that. They have not been getting it. So IT, technology, your job is to enable that 21st century enterprise, plain and simple. So what we did was we went on a big listening tour. We came back and we charted out our journey. 45 in 4 is that key tagline that everybody understands in the team, that we have to make 45 years of progress in the next 4 years. We charted that out with 3-step journey. Step 1 was improving the business of IT. Step 2, improving the business of state using IT, that is improving our customer service. And step 3 is find an area where we can leapfrog. We don't always have to be a follow. We don't always have to be 45th or 47th or 49th in good ranking. Why don't we find a space where we are comfortable and we could be number 1 for a change in the country? We used to be that. If you remember, railroad, rivers, and you'll hear Jim Schulz, I'm putting a plug in for you. When Jim comes here for Intersect Illinois and talk about what Illinois has been and what he is trying to bring it to with the partnership with Governor. But we were in that leadership position. So can we find an area where we can become a shining beacon, a lighthouse for other states to learn from us? And we thought that smartest state would be an area. So I'll talk about on this slide step 1 and step 3. Step 1, improving the business of IT. And again, I told you last time, we had tremendous number of silos in our state of Illinois organization. There was a state CIO, individual contributor in the governor's office with no direct reports. There was a deputy director in Bureau of Computer and Communication Services within an administrative services agency. And then there are 38 different CIOs reporting straight up in the chain to their directors, focusing on their agencies. So literally 38 silos. Every dollar that was spent on technology was divided in 38 before it saw the light of the day. So that ended in 420 different ERP systems, 50 licensing systems, 38 asset management. I can go on and on and on because we never thought enterprise. And we actually spent 6 months starting June of last year reaching out to all of the agency directors, CIOs, CFOs, chiefs of staff, and telling them, showing them the business case that if we can bring IT resources together, we have close to $1 billion of resources. We have 1,700 people that we spend $1 million a day on, just on people, on their salaries and overhead. If we can bring those resources together and focus on prioritized efforts, we can start changing the trajectory of state of Illinois. And with that business case, we got everyone, almost every agency directors agreed that that's the right way to do, and they said, let's do it. So January 25th, the governor, through an executive order, created the Department of Innovation and Technology and brought those 1,700 people together, brought that $1 billion spend in a coordinated way, and that first time in the history of the state, we had a methodical way of doing technology, and we added innovation charter to that. So finally, we had a Department of Innovation and Technology. So that's one of the big things that we had. Thank you. The second thing is cybersecurity. I mean, if you were in my position in June of last year, I could not sleep. I mean, 2 nights ago, there was another thing that happened. But I just could not sleep in June of last year. And the reason was we did an assessment of all of our systems. And, we were sitting on a very precarious position. We were sitting on a huge ticking time bomb of unprotected information and protected data. So what I had to do is I literally had to start right away saying that we need to start protecting information, we need to focus on cybersecurity. But then I had to find somebody who can come in and have sleepless nights so I can sleep. So we brought Kirk Lawnbaum, our CISO, on board. So thank you, Kirk. So again, for the first time in the history of the state, we have an enterprise-wide Chief Information Security Officer and a team that we built under him, and we have a cybersecurity strategy. Go on doit.illinois.gov, and our strategy, our comprehensive enterprise cybersecurity strategy is on the doit.illinois.gov, and you'll know how far we have come from where we were in June. We have an executive steering committee made up of the governor's public safety director, IEMA director, ISP director, National Guards, and they are the ones who are driving our cybersecurity strategy. It's not driven by IT. It's not driven by a bunch of mainframe people that really have to make sure that they are doing their jobs right, but it is driven by the business. So cybersecurity was another thing that I would put in the improving business of IT. And the third thing, there are so many things I can tell you. I'll just focus on a few. The third thing is getting procurement done. I mean, you all know this, right? It takes, and I said this in one of the events in April, that on an average, it takes about 18 months to finish a big procurement at the state of Illinois. That equates to getting 2 babies, one after the other. That's a long time. How can you wait for that long? So we basically said we need to cut that in half, at least, to 9 months. And we almost had it. One of the ways to do that was, so first procurement took longer. So I'm talking about the IT resource provider, ITRP, or multi-step. So at the city of Chicago, if you remember, we had, and we still have that, what we call the pre-qualified consultants pool, so that we can actually we can pre-qualify a bunch of consultants, various categories, and then we can select from those categories based on the scope of work that comes out from various agencies. That could have easily been there in the state of Illinois, but state of Illinois procurement code does not allow request for qualification. So we had to do something different where we can pre-qualify the consultants, and then we can do what they call the invitation for bid, IFB. And we published that in July of last year. By April, we had awarded to 77 vendors to do work with us. That included 33, I believe 33 or 34 MBE, WBE, DBE vendors that could do business with the state. We just lost focus a bit for the last few months, but this week we signed 60 of those 77 contracts. So we'll be able to do business easily with you. And we have a process that is now going to be published to the vendors, the vendor community, as well as to the agencies as to how can they leverage these contracts. So this basically bringing this 18-month-long process down to get some consulting work done down to literally within a few weeks. We'll be able to publish an IFB and choose the vendor from that pool, and they can start working with us. So that's basically improving the business of IT. We had we had a key focus on consolidation. I call it M&A, basically, acquiring 38 different entities and merging them and running it like a business. We had cybersecurity focus, which is not just state of Illinois, but it's a global focus that we have, and then making sure that we are doing business with you in a good way. So what we had to do in this is we needed an action-oriented team, a visionary team that gets everything and starts running with the ball. We needed to be innovation hungry. We needed to be paired and partnered with the business. So our IT department, innovation and technology department, is not run by Hardick. It's not run by IT. I am the CEO of a $1 billion startup that reports to a board of directors made up of agency directors, governor's office, and the budget office. So it is not an IT shop. It's an IT business reporting to the board of directors, accountable to the taxpayers. So that's basically how we look at step 1. Step 2, I'll come back to in a moment. Step 3 is we had to find a place where we can literally leapfrog and take leadership position. So with my experience in smart cities, working with Cisco as well as the city of Chicago, I found that there are 3 specific roles that a state government can play. One, in a smarter state, we can be a customer. We have public safety, corrections, criminal justice, public health, transportation. All of those smart city solutions are easily applicable to a smart state to make the government efficient. So we started looking at us as basically a customer for smart city solutions. The second role is state as an enabler. I mean, we have tremendous rule-making, policy-making authority, and we can actually use it positively to improve economy around IoT, smart cities, in cybersecurity, in analytics, in mobility. All of those fields, we can start focusing on much laser-focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, incubation, and that's where we partner with our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And then we can also focus on building talent and workforce, because again, if you know the way the technology is moving, the way the technology curve is moving up, creating productivity and creating jobs, we really don't have those curriculum and those kind of talent that is available to fill those jobs today, tomorrow, and 5-10 years from now. So we can start focusing on state becoming an enabler and Illinois becoming a hub for IoT and the 21st century technology. We can do that. And the third role is state as a demand aggregator. And I'm so glad the mayor of Rockford, Larry Morrissey, is here today. Rockford is a great partner. Think about, Chicago is a prime location for a big city, for smart city solution providers, 400,000 light poles. But when you go outside of Chicago, you don't have that big of a town. You don't have those large cities, large population density that becomes a target for a solution provider to get the right ARPU for them. So we partner with cities like Rockford. We are looking at putting our fiber. State owns 2,000 or leases 2,000 miles of fiber that can become an equalizer for putting these solutions on board. We also have joint procurement authority. So we have contracts with Microsoft, AT&T, Verizon that every government body in state of Illinois can leverage and buy off of. We are looking at now creating and having those joint procurement contracts for smart city solutions. So Rockford, Sandwich, Peoria, all of these cities can buy off of those contracts and implement smart city solutions. So the idea here is we don't want pockets of smartness in Illinois. We want the entire state to be a smart state. And we've already been recognized as the #1 state to be even thinking about this and having a vision and a plan. We had an event in April. We have a workshop coming up in December. We have an IoT Center of Excellence built in the government, inside state government, 11 different agency CIOs or CISOs part of that. Kevin O'Toole, who's a program manager for that. And we are working together as a team on that for making Illinois a smart state. We also have advisors from outside that are helping us how to move this. So the thing is, we have found an area, and now we are trying to become the #1 state in that area that we can become. So the takeaway from here is to keep focus on transformation, you need to first build a good story as to where you want to go. And then as a leader, you need to be a good storyteller. You need to really take that story and make sure that you're connecting all the dots to that story so you have a clear communication that you can do. Number 2 is building a winning team. And you just saw the entire team that stood up here. One of the ways that we went about, the governor is extremely clear about transparency and making sure that everybody knows what we are doing. There's nothing to hide. So those of you that are following us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you know we've been out and about. We are telling you exactly what's going on, what we did, what's coming. And that also what that does is when I talk about IoT, people are like, oh, wow, government, Illinois, talking IoT? Amazing. When I talk about, I'll soon talk about blockchain. And then blockchain? So suddenly now we are creating curiosity in the market saying that state of Illinois is doing something different. This doesn't seem like my dad's government. This seems like a much better, younger, different government. And we've been able to attract CEOs, presidents, and all in all private sector career people inside. And also we have done the same kind of communication inside, and we've been able to find people who wanted to step up, who wanted to provide innovation at the edges and bring them in and start building that team. And that's the team that has been basically carrying this ball for the last 18 months. So we have been able to map talent to vision. We have been able to mix internal, external people. And what we learned from there is we've been able to identify and develop leaders. We have delegated versus abdicating stuff to people. And then we have been able to up everybody's game. So what is here is the power of one is only a partial truth. There is something called power of one. You can have one leader who can come in and change the trajectory, but you need a team that carries the ball forward to success, to the goal line. Number 3 is we focused on building a borderless culture. I told you about all the silos that we had. And in month of June of last year, we started building working groups. So we had 11 different working groups in which I had a great resource called CIOs. We had 60 plus CIOs in all of the different agencies. We brought them together, put them in various working groups, innovation, mobility, cybersecurity. So apart from running your agency technology, you can also build enterprise technology strategy. And the way we built that enterprise technology strategy, and Mike and Marion Cook played a key role in there, is we actually, if you go on doit.illinois.org website, you will not find a 600-page document that says this is Illinois strategy. What you will find is for each horizontal and vertical a one-page strategy, which will tell you where we are, where we want to be, how are we going to go there, what are the low-hanging fruits, and then what are the bottlenecks that what are the issues that we may face. And then associated with that, you'll see a video. You'll see a video of the leader that's driving that strategy, execution of that strategy. Gone are the days when people are going to print 600-page documents and read other than RFPs. People are consuming content on video, and that's what we are giving them content in. And that's basically how we could build that working groups. 3 of those working groups became centers of excellence: mobility, IoT, and analytics. We also, apart from building those, breaking those silos internally, We also build the advisory board so we can break those borders between the private and the public sector. Now, we have to be very careful with our procurement guidelines and SB 51 and everything else that we don't inadvertently get you excluded from an RFP. So we've been very careful. But again, the idea here is we need to build a borderless culture, and we have been successfully able to build that borderless culture. I told you June we started building working groups. In March, we had our CIO council meeting, 100 people in the room. I asked them, how many of you are not in one or the other working groups? No hands were, no fingers lifted. Like literally everybody in the room was part of a working group. We all work together. It's no longer I work for DHS, I work for HFS, I work for ISP. We all work for the state of Illinois. We all work for the state of Illinois taxpayers, and that's what we are trying to do. And what we have done is literally a continuous leadership development, continuous learning that we have done. And what this has we've been able to establish here is culture change. We did not take it on as a project. Culture change automatically happened. We just literally gave people what they wanted. We gave them a way to bring that innovation to the fore, and then automatically culture started changing. If you come to Illinois state government in technology today, you will not believe that what it was 2 years ago. It's totally, totally different. The fourth one is we never forgot that customer has to be at the center. Customer has to be at the core. And what does the customer want? We sometimes don't know. When the customer comes into HFS, they give some data. They give to DHS, they give some data to them. We had to start thinking about the end-to-end experience for a customer from beginning to the end, every channel that they go through. They call us, they walk into the office, they get mobile, they get on the website. We have to give them seamless experience. And for that, we had to know a lot more about customer. How do we know a lot more about customer? We have so much data. We have petabytes of customer data. And how did we go about that? So obviously I told, and I've said this many times, that we have no shame in stealing ideas. We have no shame in copying, configuring, and applying and implementing those ideas here. So at very early on, we went to Indiana. We learned from Indiana. And they asked us, we asked them, like, if you had to do something different, because they are regarded as leaders in analytics, in government, in state government, what would you do differently? And they said that we would do a master data agreement, because somehow for governments inside the silos, we don't like to give our data to our partners in the next agency and the next agency. So what we did, we took that idea and we took a very, very bold but very scary step. We brought 13 different agencies together, and we had 16 lawyers. And we asked them, why don't you go in, bring a master data sharing agreement, have everyone sign that, and come out. I mean, having 16 lawyers in one room, it's a very, very difficult thought. And our general counsel, Mike Basil's here, and he was part of that group. But lo and behold, they actually went in. They built a master data sharing agreement. And what took Indiana 18 months to start sharing data, we finished that in 7 months. We learned from them, we applied, and now we can easily share data between 13 different agencies, and we are adding more agencies to that. With that data, now we are building 360-degree views of our customer, child, senior, families, offender. We can look at the entire history of the customer. We are building those things. On the other hand, we are building predictive analytics, so we can start helping business start making decisions using the data. So here, basically, customer is still the king, and customer data is also a major, major player in what we have been able to do. The fifth key step that we did was jumpstart and quick win. I mean, this is the best time to be a CIO, I'm telling you, because you can literally deliver wins every month, and that's what you need to do to maintain your credibility. The first thing we did, I told you about 420 ERP system. So we took the previous administration's procurement, which was done very well. We finished that procurement negotiations. We got the contracts. We kicked off ERP on SAP in July of last year, and October of this year, we rolled out state's first ERP system. We have now, state of Illinois has an ERP system. Some agencies are already on ERP financials. We are going to roll out more agencies. on board, and then we are also going to start HR, and pretty much in the next 38 to 40 months, the entire state. And this is the beauty of this. It's not just about the executive branch. The comptroller's office is in this, the treasurer's office in this. So if you want to really make a change, it really doesn't matter what party you belong to. Technology can bring that change and bring that easily. The other thing that we have done is, my parents are here, and then my mom, 72, she is much more familiar, much more easier to work with on an iPhone. But we cannot give them applications on iPhone because we state did not have a mobile infrastructure. We did not have focus on mobility, but we brought that back. We have Ramnath Kadambi here from ISAC. Him and Mike Wans, they work together. Now we have a mobile framework infrastructure ready. Since July, we've been rolling out an app a month. I mean, it's that easy. And it's also very working together as an enterprise. After this, go on your iOS, your App Store, or your Android Google Play, and look up Illinois first. Because what happens is when everybody, like 38 agencies, start building mobile apps and mobile responsive things, it's very hard to find that service on your mobile. You know there are thousands of apps on your mobile. But if you download Illinois first, we have brought all of those mobile action together into that one container. So you'll be able to now find various things that you have to do. Again, remember this. We are always about roughly right. It may not be perfect, so give us your feedback, and we'll gladly take that and proudly update Illinois First and put the next version out, and we'll be able to. So the idea is to bring the government to your fingertips, and that's the innovation. That's jump-starting and delivering quick win that requires decisiveness and bias for action. And last but not the least, the most important thing is the transformation can never be about one person. It's not about Ricketts or Epstein or Madden or Rizzo, or it's not about an individual. It's about the team. It's about everybody. It's not just about Bruce Rauner or Hardik Bhatt. It's not about one individual. It's about the entire state of Illinois team, and it's about the entire state of Illinois citizens and taxpayers and everyone that gets services from the state of Illinois. So we've always been able to think about that. And the three things that we always remembered is take the blame, share the fame, and this is important in Illinois, avoid the shame. We have to always make sure that we are not cutting corners. Even though we are going so fast at the speed that we are going, we've always been very cognizant of the fact that we have procurement rules. We have to make sure that we are not creating problems for anybody as we are moving at this pace. And we have been able to really do that by staying humble, ethical, showcasing others, showcasing successes of all of the. What we are doing in technology is not for the technology's sake. It's not for the Department of Innovation and Technology. It's for our customers, which are the agencies, and for the customers outside in the state of Illinois that are using the services from us. So here's the key thing is we have to make sure that the followership is also as important as leadership. Each leader has to follow others also with great ideas. So with these kind of key things, we've been able to bring Illinois from the bottom fourth to the top third in 50 states. We've got ERP, we have a centralized IT department, we have governance, we have EPMO, we have cybersecurity, we have mobility, analytics, we are focusing on blockchain, we have borderless culture. We literally have everything that a billion-dollar technology organization has that enables a $60 billion organization like State of Illinois that can serve 13 million Illinoisans, because we are running technology inside the state government as a business, and we mean business. We want to make sure that we are providing the services that the state of Illinois deserves, and we are turning the state around, helping the governor to turn the state around, to give them the 21st century organization that Illinois taxpayers deserve. So I really want to appreciate and thank you for the time that you have given. I also want to thank you, all the vendors that are sitting in the room, for sticking with us. For the last, you knew 364 out of 365 days, we did not have a budget, but you all continue to work with us. When people ask me, how do you get these things done without a budget? I show them this room. These are the people that really stuck with us and made sure that we are continuing at the pace. And those 1,700 employees and this leadership team, all of us, we have come together. One mission, we have to turn around the state, and technology becomes the enabler for that. Thank you very much.